If you've spent any amount of time on the internet in recent years, then odds are you're at least a little bit familiar with this face. Lieutenant Frank Columbo, the main character of, Columbo. Most younger audiences probably know about Columbo due to the renaissance of memes that have surrounded the character in recent years.
Oh, one more thing, sir. You told me you couldn't possibly have been at the crime scene at that time on account of your alibi, that being that you were at home playing your PlayStation 3. Now, forgive me, but if that's true, I just gotta ask, how could you have been playing your PS3 if the PS3 has no games?
Or perhaps they're familiar with Columbo after encountering one of the many homages or parodies of the character that pop up regularly throughout pop culture. To be entirely frank about it, you really don't have to look all that hard to see Columbo reflected somewhere in pop culture these days. But why is that? What is it about this one particular detective show from the 1970s that's allowed it to carve out such a distinct niche for itself in the hearts and minds of people around the world? I guess the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this mystery, my lovely maniacs, is to talk about the show. And if you happen to like this video, or are just a fan of Columbo as a character or series, maybe leave a like or a comment down below. I should say, to start with, that Columbo's first proper appearance was all the way back in the 1960s during an anthology series called The Chevy Mystery Show. But it should be noted that the actor who played Columbo in this series was not the same actor who would later go on to define the character in the public consciousness. And Columbo's appearance in The Chevy Mystery Show and the actual pilot of the series can largely be ignored unless you're looking for a complete history of the character. I bring all this up because I'm sure if I don't, there will be someone in the comments rushing to tell me. So, get fucked, hypothetical imaginary person. I win this round. The first appearance of Columbo, as general audiences have come to know him, was in 1971's Murder by the Book. Directed by, I shit you not, Steven Spielberg.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. Lieutenant Columbo, Mr. Franklin.
How you doing?
And from there, the show ran for 10 seasons, all the way up until 2003 when the final installment came out. With each episode of Columbo being about movie length, that is a really damn impressive lifespan for any series to have. That longevity and enduring popularity is rendered even more impressive when you remember that crime, as a genre, is one of the most popular formats of TV show out there since TV was invented. With the exception of shows like Sopranos, The Wire, or Breaking Bad, the vast majority of crime shows end up getting lost in the miasma of time because there's just so goddamn many of them. I'm sure 3 cop shows were greenlit and then cancelled in the time it took for me to say that sentence. And yet despite the rampancy of the crime genre on television, Columbo has endured. I suppose one of the elements that helped Columbo stand out, particularly when the first series started airing, is in the format of the show. Most detective shows, and indeed detective media at large, is focused on the whodunit aspect of crime solving, which is to say, this person has been murdered, who did the killing, how did they do it, and why. But an episode of Columbo will actually start with the crime being committed, and we, as audience members, get to see just who committed the crime. From there, the average episode will follow the point of view of the killer as they try and cover up their tracks. And so, the thrill of a Columbo episode is not in figuring out who the killer is, but wondering how the killer is going to get caught. What piece of evidence did they overlook?
Well, in a manner of speaking, this isn't really a whodunit, it's more of a how we did it.
A show can get pretty far if it manages to have a unique premise, and Columbo certainly stands out compared to a lot of other detective shows. But, of course, that's only one facet we need to consider when it comes to this analysis. When these criminals are trying to cover their tracks, it isn't long before they end up running into the man himself, Detective Frank Columbo. And after only a few minutes spent watching the man himself in action, it's easy to see another reason why Columbo has such an enduring sense of popularity. Columbo, as a character, is just really fun to watch. Just look at this guy. He radiates charm in the same way Henry Kissinger radiated pure awfulness.
Cabbage.
Cabbage? And where do you see this? A 3-pound corned beef.
From his polite and folksy mannerisms through to his disheveled appearance, there's something that's just really inherently likable about Columbo as a character. And that look is pretty goddamn iconic at this point. There's a reason why a man with a cigar and a wrinkled raincoat is basically visual shorthand for a detective across the world. Yeah, there's a reason why a lot of detectives look and dress like that. You can thank Columbo, especially in Japanese media, cause my god, the Japanese love Columbo. I mean, just look at this sick-ass Columbo box set they have in Japan. That is true fandom right there. If you want another example of how globally beloved Columbo is as a character, Romania was apparently really keen on the guy, so much so there was very nearly riots when the show actually ended. The Romanian people apparently thought their government was holding out on them when it came to new episodes, and so the Romanian government had to reach out to Peter Falk and ask him to smooth things over with the populace. Can you remember the last time any other actor had to do anything like that? 'Cause I certainly can't. A hefty part of Columbo's charm has to be attributed to Peter Falk's natural charisma. I'm generally against parasocial relationships. Unless they're parasocial relationships with me specifically, you should love me more than you love your family. But even I can't help but be drawn in by Falk's natural grandfatherly energy, and I think one of the reasons why they haven't tried any sort of reboot or remake of Columbo is because nobody else could ever really provide that same energy. Ah, fuck, I've absolutely jinxed it, haven't I? Some boneheaded studio executive is gonna try and pitch a younger, sexier Columbo starring Timothée Chalamet or Tom Holland or some shit. One of the most interesting things about Columbo as a character is that we really don't know all that much about his personal life despite him being on screen for literal decades. We know that he works for the police, we know that he has a dog, and he potentially has a wife, although we never see her. Don't look at this doesn't count. And yet this lack of in-depth inside knowledge about the man doesn't make him any less likable, nor does it make him seem any less deep or intriguing as a character. If anything, it's just another mystery for the audience to speculate about.
Boy, this is a fantastic rug. My wife would love this rug. We gotta get a new rug, and this is just the kind she wants.
But since so much about Columbo's backstory is shrouded in mystery, I personally choose to believe that he is the divine angel of justice sent to reap the sinners and criminals of the world. And the wife he regularly alludes to is none other than God Almighty, who will bring eternal suffering unto all those sinners who end up in Columbo's path. Or, something more mundane if you want to feel that way. For a portion of a lot of Columbo episodes, Columbo himself is something of a background character, just sorta lurking in the shadows and skulking around while the killer goes about their nefarious deeds. He has a tendency to use his bumbling, unassuming facade to lull the criminals into a false sense of security, which makes it all the more satisfying when the smug bastards get caught out in a lie or have some evidence thrown in their face.
All right, Lieutenant. You claim that I planted these paintings? Suppose you prove it.
Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 seconds later.
This is entrapment. It's a setup, that's all. You touched those paintings just now while I wasn't looking. You saw him do it, didn't you? They were working on it. He touched them.
It's a little bit formulaic, sure, but there's a great sense of catharsis whenever these gotcha moments crop up towards the end of an episode. There's a universal satisfaction to be found whenever an evil bastard gets what's coming to him, and bonus points if said evil bastard is also a smug snake. And while many years may have passed since the last episode of Columbo aired, that sense of catharsis hasn't really gotten any fainter over time, which makes the episodes infinitely rewatchable. Another point in Columbo's favor is that the show manages to avoid one of the common pitfalls you see in detective shows. I'm sure you have at least some idea of the kind of show I'm referring to, things like BBC's Sherlock, or Bones, or Young Sheldon, where the main character is a galaxy-brained giga-genius who can guess the blood type and dick size of the murderer just because they managed to catch a glimpse of a footprint in a Polaroid picture taken 75 years ago or some stupid shit like that. where the term detective is basically synonymous with wizard. It's a bit of a recurring problem across a lot of police shows where crimes aren't really solved through logic or deductive reasoning, they're more solved with magic, essentially. Usually by having a character slap a keyboard a couple of times to instantly understand some major aspect of the case, or the main character has some bolt of inspiration that allows them to instantly know something the audience couldn't possibly know. To describe this kind of writing in the most uncharitable terms I can muster, this is essentially a dumb person's idea of what a smart person is like. But Columbo, fortunately, manages to avoid those kinds of pitfalls. Usually when someone goes up against Columbo, they're destroyed by facts and logic. While we as audience members obviously know the whole mystery before it even plays out because we see the murder at the start of almost every episode, we're able to always follow the logic Columbo uses when it comes to catching out the killers. Columbo isn't some cartoonish supercomputer of a detective, he's not solving crimes by having bullshit flying around his head BBC Sherlock style. He's solving crimes through logical, deductive reasoning and careful questioning of his suspects. Which may not sound like much, admittedly, but if you've spent as much time as I have watching crime-solving wizards, it's just really nice to see a show that happens to be smartly written in comparison.
That clock reads 10 o'clock. That's very plain. 10 o'clock, sir. That's the time that you claim you were at home alone with your wife.
The creators of the show really did manage to strike gold when it came to both the quality of the script writing and the quality of the acting. And the show does have the distinction of having some really memorable guest stars over the years like William Shatner or Dick Van Dyke and even Johnny Cash of all people. It'd be nice to make one of those 8-hour-long, every episode of Columbo ranked videos, but I currently don't have the means or time to make a video like that, so instead I'll settle for just listing a few of my own personal favorite episodes. And if by chance you haven't seen any episodes of Columbo for yourself, maybe they'll serve as a decent introduction to the series. There's not really any continuity to worry about, so hey, just pick and choose whichever you want to look at. Suitable for framing. Negative reaction, Columbo goes to the guillotine, double exposure, swan song, and short fuse. And if you're looking for a place where you can watch or stream Columbo, you can apparently stream it on, Peacock? What the fuck is Peacock? People are just pulling streaming services out of their ass these days, this sucks. Or if you don't feel like paying money for another ridiculous streaming service, you could just go to the Internet Archive, which has every single episode of Columbo available for free. I guess Columbo's enduring legacy is that it's one of the top detective series ever made, a series that's of such high quality that it still manages to bypass both the language and generational barriers. No matter how old a TV show or movie may be, high quality acting and writing will ensure it's timeless. It really was a one-of-a-kind series. Thanks for watching. Oh, but one more thing. I noticed that when you sat down to watch this video, you didn't also click the subscribe button afterwards. That's the kind of thing a guilty person would do. You're not a guilty person, are you? Because if you are, I'm gonna have to send you to the Columbo dimension.
To tell you the truth, ma'am, I could use some good news. Cheer up. There is more than one fish in the sea.